Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi, how you doing?
Good to see you.
Perashat Yitro.
Yes.
I was always fascinated by the Chachamim's discussion on when Yitro arrives to the Machaneh, to the camp, and he gives this advice to Moshe Rabbeinu. Some of the Mefarshim say that Yitro came before Matan Torah. A different group of Mefarshim say that Yitro came after Matan Torah. And according to that explanation, that Yitro came after Matan Torah and it was just written in the beginning of the Perashat, the real question that you have to ask is why? Why is it written out of order? And I think the best explanation to that is that we want to juxtapose, we want to bring close two Goyim, as close as possible to compare them and contrast them. This week's Parashat starts with Yitro, last week's Parashat ends with Amalek. And by putting them so close together, it forces us to compare the two different types of Goyim. Because after we saw what happened with Amalek, as a Jewish people, which is such a traumatizing thing, and we know that Amalek exists, right? And they're always trying to sabotage, and even at their own expense, with no gain to themselves, right? It's a hatred of the Jewish people that has no benefit to them. It's just pure hatred. So when you hear that story of Amalek, you're like, are these all the Goyim? And then the Torah says no. Not all the Goyim are Amalek. Wow. There's a Yitro over here. There are some that here, we heard a beautiful Chidush from the rabbi this morning, how when you hear something, you have to act by it, right? The Amalek here, they act in such a negative way. Yitro hears and has a completely different perspective on what he saw. And he sees the beauty of the Jewish people and the Torah and all the miracles, and he wants to come closer. And Amalek takes it and just wants to destroy and be negative. We have to understand that there are enemies out there, but we can't forget that there are those like Yitro that are our allies and our friends. We have to foster those relationships. We can't let those Yitros go. Like at the end, when Yitro does want to leave, Moshe Rabbeinu highly insists for Yitro to stay and praises him and says, "You're going to be our Einayim, you're going to guide us, you're going to lead us, you know the." So why are you so insistent? Because you're an ally, you're an asset, and we cannot distance and push away our allies.
Beautiful. That's why maybe the Perashat is called Perashat Yitro.
Wow. Yeah.
It should be called Perashat Matan Torah.
Right. How could you not call it Matan Torah? Right.
How could you not call it Matan Torah?
Yeah.
But do you ever think about? I mean, his name was Yitro, right? Why did they add a letter Vav? So I think the letter Vav in Hebrew literally means hook. It's a hook. He hooked himself to the Jewish nation.
And it looks like a hook also.
Yeah, it looks like a hook. Okay. He hooked himself to the Jewish nation. He was willing to dedicate himself, leave everything behind. It was very hard for him.
For sure.
I mean, he was Kohen Midian.
Right. He wasn't a nobody.
No, he wasn't a nobody.
Right.
The Pasuk tells you, it should have said, Vayishma Yitro.
Yeah.
Hotel Moshe. Right. Kohen Midian.
Why is that necessary?
Why is that necessary?
Yeah.
To show you that he left everything behind. Now he's hooking himself to the Jewish nation. That's a big commitment on Yitro's part. Whereas Amalek, as you said, pardon me, Amalek also heard the same exact thing as Yitro. Okay. But Amalek decided to go and fight the Jewish nation.
Okay. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
How you could have the same experience.
Same exact.
With such divergent...
Once I heard a story, there were two friends in the desert, and as they're walking in the desert, one of them saw a scorpion. Pardon me, a cobra, a venomous cobra, and the cobra encircled itself surrounded itself and went all over the guy's leg, and his friends were watching all this, and he's screaming, Shema Yisrael, Hashem HaKadosh Echad. And all of a sudden, the snake, as like a little baby, left him. A few years later, they reunite together, and one of them was Huzay B'Tshuva. The one that the snake was on his leg was Huzay B'Tshuva, and the other one was a regular Yehudi. So they reunite together and they say, remember that experience a few years back with the desert? He says, yeah, of course. He says, what's the difference? Why was I Huzay B'Tshuva and you weren't? He says, well, the snake wasn't on my leg. It was on your leg. Right. But here they saw the same exact thing. Right. They went through the same thing, but one chose a different path than the other. Okay. But that's what happens to us in life.
Certain moments impact us differently.
Yes. Yes.
And we all have opportunities for inspiration.
Always.
And the more we get, the more chance that something will stick.
Always. The Baal Shem Tov says that whatever you see in life is Hashem speaking to you. There's no coincidence. If you saw it, Hashem is speaking to you. And Yitro, and that's why it says Vayishma Yitro. Vayishma doesn't only mean he heard. He took the message. He absorbed it. If everybody heard the same exact thing, everybody heard. But Yitro says, I heard it. You know what? Hashem is speaking to me. The God of the Jews is speaking to me. That's why we make a big thing about Yitro.
Okay. Wow.
You know? And later in the Perashat, it says, Vayishma Moshe lekol hoteno. Moshe also, he says, if Yitro is coming over to me and giving me the advice with the Sarah, Alaikum Sarah Me'ot, no, I gotta do something with it. I gotta internalize it. Let me run with it. Let me act on it.
Wow.
You know?
People listen
to people who listen.
Correct. Wow.
Nice. People
listen to people who listen.
Yes.
Yeah.
I was learning with a boy here in the yeshiva, the Iget Ramban.
Wow.
And learning it with the Perush in English, and he says over there that the word listen is the same letters as silent. Which means if you're silent enough and you don't ask questions and you internalize, you really listen when you're silent, then that's the real way of listening. Listening is really absorbing the message, not trying to always mitvakeya on the person.
Respond back to what you say.
Be silent. Yeah.
Bezrat Hashem will have more Yitros
for
the Jewish people, and we'll learn to be more like Yitro, to listen and to internalize what we have.
Shabbat Shalom, Rabbi. Good to see you.